What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected voices loses his cool on live television? In just 34 seconds, a simple question turned into an explosive showdown that nobody saw coming. But before we get into what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the moments they don't want you to see, and the truth behind those perfect celebrity smiles. Don't miss out on tomorrow's bombshell. Last night on the Jennifer Hudson Show, what started as a celebration of Morgan Freeman's incredible career turned into one of the most intense confrontations daytime television has ever witnessed. The legendary actor, known for his calm demeanor and that iconic voice, completely lost it in front of a shocked studio audience. What unfolded was a masterclass in how quickly respect can turn to rage when egos collide and opinions clash. Jennifer Hudson welcomed Morgan Freeman onto her stage with the kind of warmth she's known for. The crowd went absolutely wild as he walked out, waving to fans who've admired him for decades. The applause seemed to go on forever, with people standing and cheering for this Hollywood icon. They settled into their chairs, and for the first few minutes, everything seemed normal, even pleasant. They talked about his latest projects, some funny stories from movie sets where he'd worked with other famous actors, and the audience was eating up every word, hanging on to that famous voice that's narrated so many of their favorite films. Jennifer was smiling, laughing at his stories, and it looked like this would be another successful episode. The cameras captured every angle, the lighting was perfect, and the energy in the room was positive and upbeat. But then Jennifer decided to shift gears and bring up a topic that's been swirling around Hollywood for years. A topic that some people whisper about, but few have the courage to address directly with someone of Morgan's stature. She leaned forward in her chair, her expression turning serious, and the audience picked up on the change immediately. You could feel the shift in the atmosphere. "Morgan, I have to ask you something that a lot of people have been talking about," she said, her voice measured but firm. "There's been some controversy about comments you've made in the past regarding certain movements in Hollywood. Comments that have upset quite a few people." Morgan's smile faded instantly like someone had flipped a switch. His eyes narrowed just a bit, and you could feel the temperature in the room drop several degrees. The audience members who'd been smiling moments ago now sat up straighter, sensing danger. "What comments are you referring to, Jennifer?" he asked, his voice steady but with an edge that wasn't there before, that slight hardness that suggested he knew exactly what she was talking about and didn't appreciate it being brought up. Jennifer didn't back down, though you could see. Her grip tightened slightly on the armrest of her chair. "Well, you've been quoted saying some things that people found, let's say, dismissive, about important issues that matter to a lot of folks in our community. Issues about representation, about speaking up, about making Hollywood a more equal place." The audience got quiet, that kind of tense silence where everyone's holding their breath. You could hear people shifting in their seats, the rustle of clothing, someone's nervous cough, all of it amplified because nobody was talking. Morgan sat back in his chair, crossing his arms across his chest, in a defensive posture that body language experts would have a field day analyzing. "I've always spoken my mind, Jennifer. I don't apologize for having opinions that might differ from what's popular at the moment. I never have, and I never will." "But Morgan," Jennifer pressed on, and you could tell she was committed to this line of questioning now. There was no turning back. "When you have the platform you have, when millions of people listen to what you say, don't you think there's a responsibility to be mindful of how your words impact people, especially younger actors and people just starting out who look up to you?" That's when Morgan's jaw tightened visibly. Several cameras zoomed in to catch it, that muscle twitching just below his ear. "Responsibility? Let me tell you about responsibility, Jennifer. I've been in this industry for over 50 years, 5 decades. I've worked my way up from absolute nothing, faced discrimination you couldn't even imagine, and I did it without playing victim or asking for special treatment from anyone." Jennifer's eyebrows shot up at that. "Nobody's asking for special treatment, Morgan. People are asking for basic respect and acknowledgement of their struggles. They're asking to be heard, to be seen, to not be invisible anymore. Struggles? Morgan's voice got louder, projecting into the studio in that commanding way that makes him such a powerful presence on screen. Everyone's got struggles, Jennifer. That's life. That's what being human is about. But now it seems like everyone wants a medal for getting out of bed in the morning. Everyone wants to be celebrated just for existing. The audience gasped collectively, a sound like air being sucked out of the room. Some people started murmuring to each other, turning in their seats to see their neighbors' reactions. Were they really hearing this? Was this actually happening? Jennifer's expression hardened significantly, and she sat up straighter in her chair, her posture becoming more rigid, more confrontational. That's incredibly dismissive, Morgan. You do realize that your success doesn't erase the challenges that others face, right? Just because you made it doesn't mean the system is fair. Morgan leaned forward now, both of them moving closer to each other across the coffee table, like boxers in a ring. His famous voice now carried a sharp, cutting tone. And your platform doesn't give you the right to lecture me about what I should think or say. I earned my place in this industry through talent and hard work, not through complaining about how unfair everything is. Nobody's complaining, Morgan. Jennifer's voice rose to match his, her own patience clearly wearing thin. They're fighting for equality and fair treatment. They're speaking up about harassment and abuse and discrimination. That's not the same thing as complaining. That's called having courage. Fighting? Morgan scoffed, actually laughed in a bitter way that showed zero amusement. Looks more like whining to me. Back in my day, you proved yourself through your work, not through Twitter posts and hashtags and viral videos. You let your talent speak for itself. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife at this point. Jennifer's hands gripped the armrests of her chair so hard her knuckles were turning white. The cameras caught it all. Every micro-expression, every moment of rising anger on both their faces. Your day? Morgan, times have changed. Society has evolved. People are speaking up about injustices that were always there but got swept under the rug because nobody had the power to talk about them. Just because you didn't talk about them doesn't mean they didn't exist. Don't you dare suggest I don't know about injustice. Morgan shot back, his voice booming now, filling every corner of the studio. Don't you dare sit there in your comfortable chair on your nice show and tell me I don't understand. I lived through real discrimination. I was there during the civil rights era. I marched. I protested. I fought actual battles against actual oppression. What's happening now is a bunch of people competing to see who can be the most offended, who can claim the biggest victimhood. Several audience members started booing loudly. Someone yelled something that the cameras didn't quite catch. Jennifer held up her hand, trying to quiet them, but her face showed she was barely holding back her own anger now. Her chest was rising and falling rapidly, her breathing heavy. Morgan, that is such bullshit, and you know it. People are sharing their real experiences of harassment, of abuse, of discrimination. How can you sit there and belittle that? How can you dismiss their pain? Morgan stood up suddenly, his chair scooting back with the force of it, making Jennifer flinch back slightly in her seat. At 6 feet tall, he now towered over her, and it changed the dynamic of the confrontation entirely. Belittle? I'm not belittling anything. I'm trying to inject some reality, some common sense into this conversation. Not everything is racist. Not everything is sexist. Not everything is an attack. Sometimes people fail because they're not good enough. And nobody wants to hear that anymore. Nobody wants to face the truth that maybe they just don't have what it takes. The studio erupted in absolute chaos. People were shouting, some defending Morgan, others calling him out, voices overlapping in a cacophony of anger and disbelief. Jennifer stood up too, facing him across the coffee table between them, refusing to be physically intimidated, even though he was taller. So, what are you saying? That everyone who's ever spoken up about being mistreated, about being harassed, about being discriminated against, is just making excuses? That's what you think? I'm saying that talent speaks for itself. Morgan's voice thundered over the noise, commanding attention even in the chaos. Real talent doesn't need hashtags and movements and publicity campaigns. And if you're spending more time talking about being a victim than perfecting your craft, than actually working on your skills, then maybe that's why you're not succeeding. Maybe that's the real problem. Get the hell out! Jennifer's voice cut through everything like a knife. The studio went dead silent instantly, everyone freezing in place. I mean it, Morgan. I'm serious. I welcomed you onto my show with respect and admiration, and you've disrespected not just me, but everyone in this audience, and everyone watching at home, who's had the courage to speak their truth, to share their pain, to ask for better. Morgan's face was red now, flushed with anger and indignation. A vein was pulsing visibly in his temple. Oh, so now we're kicking people out for having different opinions? This is what it's come to? Real mature, Jennifer. Real professional. Can't handle a different viewpoint, so you just shut it down? Different opinions are fine, Jennifer said, her voice shaking with anger but also with conviction. I welcome different opinions. But you're not sharing opinions, Morgan. You're being cruel and dismissive to people who've suffered real trauma, real pain. You're invalidating their experiences. There's a difference between having a different opinion and being hurtful. Trauma, Morgan said mockingly, drawing out the blands for word. That word's lost all meaning because everyone's claiming to have it now. Everyone's traumatized by everything. Someone looked at them wrong. Trauma. Someone said something they didn't like. Trauma. It's gotten ridiculous. That's it! Jennifer pointed toward the exit, her arm fully extended, finger aimed like an arrow. Security, please escort Mr. Freeman off my stage. This interview is over. We're done here. I don't need security, Morgan snapped, his voice dripping with contempt. I'm perfectly capable of leaving on my own. And you know what? This is exactly what's wrong with television today. With society today. Can't have a real conversation without someone getting their feelings hurt and shutting it down. Everyone's so fragile. Real conversation? Jennifer's voice was incredulous, almost laughing in disbelief. You're not having a conversation, Morgan. You're on a rant, and you're being hurtful for no good reason. This is my show, my stage, and I decide what flies to hear. And this doesn't. This disrespect doesn't. Morgan grabbed his suit jacket from the back of his chair and threw it over his shoulder in one swift motion. Your show, right? Well, good luck with that. I'm sure your echo chamber of yes people will make you feel real validated. I'm sure they'll all tell you how brave and strong you are. Better than being bitter and out of touch, Jennifer fired back, without missing a beat. Better than being so stuck in the past that you can't see the present. The audience was on their feet now, at least half of them, some cheering for Jennifer, others yelling at Morgan, others just standing there in shock, trying to process what was happening. He turned to face them, spreading his arms wide in a theatrical gesture. Look at all of you, so eager to tear down someone who speaks differently than you, who thinks differently. This is what passes for tolerance now? This is progress? One of Jennifer's producers appeared at the side of the stage, trying to usher Morgan toward the exit, reaching out to touch his arm. He shrugged them off aggressively. I can walk myself, thank you very much. I don't need to be escorted out like some kind of criminal. Jennifer stayed rooted in place, her chest heaving with anger, her face flushed. You know what, Morgan? I used to look up to you. Growing up, I thought you were someone worth admiring. I thought you represented dignity and wisdom. But right now, you're just a sad old man who's so caught up in how things used to be that you can't see how much pain you're causing with your words. Morgan stopped in his tracks and turned back to her, slowly, deliberately. For a moment, it looked like he might say something else, something even worse, something that would make this whole situation even more explosive. His mouth opened, then closed. He shook his head slowly, a bitter smile spreading across his face. You'll understand when you're older, Jennifer. You'll see how all this outrage and performative activism doesn't actually change anything. It's all just noise. In 10 years, you'll look back and realize I was right. Get out! Jennifer screamed, losing her composure completely now, her voice cracking. Get the hell out of my studio right now! I don't want you here anymore! Morgan finally turned and started walking toward the exit with measured, deliberate steps, but not before stopping one more time to address the cameras directly, looking right into the lens. To everyone watching at home who still believes in common sense and personal responsibility, who still believes in hard work and talent over victimhood, I apologize that you had to witness this tantrum. Some people can't handle honest discussion anymore. Some people just can't handle the truth. You're unbelievable! Jennifer shouted after him, her voice echoing through the studio. This isn't honest discussion. This isn't truth. This is you being an asshole. That's what this is. The audience roared at that. Some cheering wildly, some gasping at Jennifer's language, some pulling out their phones to make sure they were recording this. Morgan didn't turn around this time. He just waved his hand dismissively over his shoulder like he was swatting away a fly and kept walking toward the exit. 2 security guards appeared and flanked him, not touching him, but making absolutely sure he was heading toward the door and not coming back. Jennifer stood there breathing hard, her hands on her hips, looking at her audience like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. She looked at all of them, many of whom were still standing, still processing what they'd just witnessed, still talking to each other in excited, shocked voices. I'm sorry you all had to see that, she said, her voice hoarse from yelling. I really am. But I'm not going to let anyone, I don't care how famous they are, I don't care how many awards they've won, come onto my stage and disrespect the struggles that so many people have faced. I won't do it. The audience erupted in applause and cheers that seemed to go on forever. People were whistling, stomping their feet, some were crying. Jennifer nodded, visibly emotional, wiping at her eyes quickly, though it was hard to tell if those were tears of anger or sadness or relief, or all of it mixed together. Meanwhile, Morgan had reached the stage exit. He paused there for just a moment, his back to everyone, his shoulders tense and rigid. Then he pushed through the door with force and disappeared from view, the door swinging shut behind him with a loud bang. The studio was still buzzing with energy, people turning to each other to discuss what just happened, pulling out their phones to text their friends, to post on social media, to make sure the world knew what they'd just witnessed. Jennifer's producers were rushing around everywhere, trying to figure out what to do next, how to handle the rest of the show, whether they should cut to commercial, or address what happened first, or just end the taping entirely. Jennifer slowly sat back down in her chair, looking completely drained, exhausted. She stared at the empty chair where Morgan had been sitting just minutes before, where everything had been fine before it all fell apart so quickly, so explosively. The audience gradually settled down too, sitting back in their seats, waiting to see what she would say next. What could possibly be said after something like that? That's not how I wanted this to go, Jennifer said quietly, though her microphone picked it up clearly, broadcasting her words to everyone. I really wanted to have a good conversation today. I wanted to celebrate his career and his achievements, but I can't and won't compromise on basic human decency. Not on my show. Not anywhere. Never. Backstage, Morgan Freeman was refusing to talk to anyone. He brushed past staff members who tried to offer him water or ask if he was okay, ignored the producer who tried to apologize and calm things down, and headed straight for his dressing room with determined steps. His publicist was already on the phone. You could see her pacing back and forth, no doubt doing damage control, trying to figure out how to spin this disaster, what statement to release. But Morgan didn't seem to care about any of it. He slammed the dressing room door behind him with enough force to rattle the frame, and through the thin walls, people standing nearby could hear him cursing and throwing things, the crash of objects hitting walls. Back in the studio, Jennifer was trying to compose herself, taking deep breaths, while her makeup artist rushed over to touch up her face, which was flushed and streaked from the confrontation. The stage manager was counting down, getting ready to go back to filming, even though everyone knew this episode would need major editing. Or maybe they'd air it exactly as it happened. After all, this was the kind of raw, unfiltered moment that people would be talking about for weeks, maybe months. The warm-up comedian tried to get the audience's energy back up, cracking a few jokes to lighten the mood, but it was hard to laugh after what everyone had just witnessed. People tried, some courtesy laughs came out, but their hearts weren't in it. This wasn't the manufactured drama of reality TV, the scripted conflicts designed to get ratings. This was real anger, real hurt, real conflict playing out between two people who should have been allies, who came from the same industry, but instead became adversaries in the span of a few heated minutes. Jennifer looked at the cameras, knowing that millions of people would eventually see this moment, would judge her for it, would have opinions about whether she handled it right or wrong. She thought about her team, about her reputation, about whether she'd done the right thing, but mostly, she thought about all the people out there who'd been dismissed and belittled the way Morgan had dismissed them during their conversation. She thought about everyone who'd ever been told their struggles didn't matter, that they were just being too sensitive, that they should just work harder and stop complaining. She thought about every person who'd ever tried to speak up about mistreatment and been shut down. And in that moment, she knew she'd made the right choice, even if it cost her a famous guest, even if people would criticize her for it, even if it created controversy. Some things were more important than a smooth show or good ratings or keeping powerful people happy. Some things were worth fighting for, even when it got ugly, even when it got messy. The door to the studio opened again briefly, and Jennifer's heart jumped for a second, thinking maybe Morgan had come back, maybe to apologize or to escalate things even further, to have another round. But it was just another producer, giving her a thumbs up and mouthing 2 minutes until they'd start filming the next segment. Jennifer nodded, straightening her shoulders, putting on her professional face again, that smile that television demands, even when you're falling apart inside. But outside the studio, Morgan Freeman was already in his car, sitting in the back seat, being driven away from the lot through the gates. He stared out the window at the Los Angeles streets passing by, his jaw still clenched, still convinced he was right, still angry at being called out, still unable or unwilling to see why his words had caused such an explosion. His phone was already blowing up with calls and texts, the screen lighting up over and over, but he ignored them all, letting them pile up as he rode in silence, staring at nothing. The confrontation was over, but its effects would ripple out far beyond that studio. Back on stage, Jennifer took one last deep breath, fixed her smile, and prepared to face her cameras again, knowing that this episode would define her show in ways she never expected. When she woke up that morning, the audience was still buzzing with nervous energy, still processing what they'd witnessed, still talking in hushed voices about what had just gone down. And somewhere in the control booth, the director was making notes about which angles caught the best moments of the fight, which shots showed the raw emotion on both their faces, which seconds of footage would become the clips that everyone shared online, that would play on entertainment news shows for days. Morgan Freeman's car pulled out of the studio lot and onto the Los Angeles streets, taking him away from the scene of what would become one of the most talked about talk show moments in recent memory. He still didn't think he'd done anything wrong. He still believed he'd just been speaking the truth, his truth, even if that truth hurt others. And that, perhaps more than anything else that had happened in that studio, was the saddest part of the whole situation. The complete inability, unwillingness to see another perspective, to acknowledge other people's pain. Jennifer Hudson, still sitting in her chair on stage, looked at the camera and prepared to continue her show, to move forward. She'd stood her ground, defended what she believed in, and refused to let her platform be used to minimize other people's pain or dismiss their experiences. Whether that would be seen as brave or controversial or both remained to be seen. But she knew in her heart that she'd done what she had to do, what her conscience demanded. The stage lights brightened, the director called for action, and the show went on, even though everything had changed. The empty chair where Morgan Freeman had sat just minutes before remained empty for the rest of the episode, a silent reminder of the moment when a conversation turned into a confrontation, when respect turned to anger, and when two people from the same industry found themselves on opposite sides of what seemed like an unbridgeable divide. And that's how one of Hollywood's most respected actors ended up getting kicked off the Jennifer Hudson show after the most heated argument daytime television has seen in years, an explosion that nobody saw coming, but that everyone will remember.